And then there's self-accountability, which is, if I don't even care if Woody goes to the gym or not, I'm going to be there. And if he's there, great. And if he's not, I don't care. I'm going to do my workout all the same, just as hard, just as much, if he was or was not looking. And that to me is character. It's accountability for sure, but it's character. What do you do when no one is watching? Would you make the same decisions today in every instance if nobody ever knew what you did? If it's yes, then I think you're in alignment with your character. You have integrity. And if it's no, then you have some issues to work out there. Kipp, what's up, man? Great to see you this Monday. A little bit of confusion on my end as to whether or not I was going to be here, but then I started thinking, I'm like, I can't. Kipp's just gonna mess this whole thing up if I let him do it alone. So yeah. I better get on the show and make it happen. No, I actually just enjoy our conversations. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Well, and there's a level of pressure that goes down when we get to have a conversation versus solo, right? There's a little bit of like, okay, solo, like, don't sound like a moron. But now I don't mind sounding like a moron because you're here to make us sound half intelligent at least. So
yeah, or at least just calling you a moron. And for whatever reason, when a friend says it, it's way better than when somebody else calls it to you or you call yourself a moron.
So we preemptively give ourselves labels so that way it's a little bit easier to take. Yeah,
exactly. Actually, that leads into a good point. I did a podcast on Friday. I'm not sure if you listened to it, but I think I titled it, The Stories We Tell Ourselves Define Us as Men.
Yeah.
And I took a lot from your playbook on that one because you've talked a lot about the stories and the narratives that we craft around the circumstances that we're part of. If you guys haven't listened to that one, it might very well be one of the most important topics I've covered on a Friday Field Notes.
Yeah.
So go listen.
I liked it. It was good stuff. And you had an M42 Adventures pistol class this past weekend as well.
We did. Yeah, we did a level 2 pistol course. A good friend of ours, Chase Siegmiller, is our firearms instructor. He's a range safety officer out here at I can't even think of the place, but it's here in southern Utah. And yeah, we had a great course. I probably fired hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of rounds over the weekend. And I think what stood out to me more than anything is all of my groups started to get tighter. I don't really spend a whole lot of time training with my pistol. Yeah. So the fact that I'm doing it more is a good thing, but the groups are getting tighter and just the repetition just over and over and over again, doing the same thing. And this one we worked on drawing from a holster and just the movement of drawing and just we started slow and gradually picked up and then did some drills. It was fun. We had a good time.
That's cool. Any key technique that you learned that you didn't know before? It was just reps mostly.
Yeah, the technique I learned more than anything was in an encounter, I'm going to hide behind my girlfriend because she is an incredible shot. Oh my gosh. I was standing right next to her. We had teams of 2 to 3 people at a table shooting, and we were all shooting at the same time, but I was standing right next to her, and her group was within probably like a sand dollar. And she shot, I'm not kidding, hundreds of rounds, and all of them were within a sand dollar. Mine are like, not like a dinner plate, but like a buffet platter.
Yeah. That's funny.
So she's amazing. No, but the biggest thing for me is, and I know this about myself, especially because of hunting, I get excited and my adrenaline gets going. And so he was giving me some instruction and he says there's a lot of shaking. And he says that's probably just your adrenaline pumping. And he also said that's why a lot of women are actually better shooters than men because they don't have the same level of pressure they put on themselves as men do to perform. Between that and then just gripping the firearm tighter, form was okay, but just gripping it tighter so it doesn't move. And then just going through the rounds so that adrenaline and excitement kicks in less will really help. And it did seem to help as the day progressed.
I love it. Man.
Yeah. It's a good time. So it's awesome. Crazy. But with that, and then on top of, I was going to say, I don't know why I did this. I do know why I did it, but then I'm like second guessing myself. I volunteered to help with the merchandise for my oldest son's lacrosse team and sponsorships. Like, why did I? And I can't dabble in anything. I just refuse to do it. So when I go in, I go all in. We talked to Josh Wellman. He does our website and some other design work for us. I messaged him. I'm like, hey, I want to build a website for the team and this and that. I'm like, what are you doing? I cannot dabble. So now I'm overwhelmed. And then coach is like, hey, we need these jerseys by Wednesday. I'm like, it's Friday. Like, how do you want me to get those by Wednesday? So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate your efforts regardless. They better.
We'll see. They better. Yeah, exactly. I'm never doing it again.
That's funny.
Well, should we talk about headlines? I have one.
Yeah.
I saw a video. I'm sure you've seen it. Most people at this point probably have. It went viral. This female police officer was assisting another male police officer during what I imagine was a pretty routine traffic stop. But they got the gentleman out, and the gentleman in the car seemed to be complying, like he was being, perfectly compliant. And he had a gun on his hip, and I think it was an inside the waistband gun, or I don't know for sure. But the male officer was telling him to get out of the car, turn around, and then the female officer went to grab the gun, and she grabbed it and pulled it out of the holster and shot the suspect in the leg
with his own gun.
And you could tell with his own gun, and you could tell the guy that she's freaking out, and the police officer's like, put the gun down. Just put the gun down. So she just sets the gun on the ground and like walks off, wanders off, moseys off. And I mean, this is just indicative of the DEI stuff. And here's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, no, I might actually say it. Women don't belong in law enforcement. At least out in the field. They just don't.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to get a lot of flack. I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on that. But the reality is men are stronger, they're bigger, they're more intimidating, and they just are going to do a better job generally in the field than women are. But when you start getting into this DEI nonsense and hiring based on quotas, and we need so many women and so many black people and so many transgenders and so many homosexuals and like all this kind of stuff, you automatically are diminishing the quality. Now, this could have been a bad day for this female. In fact, you know what? A man could have done it just as easily and probably has. Yeah. So that's not the issue. The issue is when you have to hire for diversity, for immutable characteristics, you automatically diminish the quality of the work, the performance, the standard. So I think it's a really good thing on top of others that Trump has come in and eliminated a lot of the DEI stuff within government institutions because it just creates horrible working environments. It lowers standards. You know, you see the same thing in the military, and Pete Hegseth was obviously confirmed over the weekend or end of last week. So there's going to be a lot of changes that I think are for the better. I did hear one guy say, or a woman say, I guess I don't know if it's a woman or man, but it was some feedback that they got on one of Matt Walsh's posts about this. And they had said that females are better because they can diffuse situations more easily. And I'm thinking in a police setting, if I was a criminal, if I saw a man like Jay Jardulo, who's what, 6'3", 230 pounds, maybe even bigger than that. And if I saw him, and then I saw a 5'6", 5'7" female that weighed, $140, $130, which is going to deter me more? Of course, I'm not going to mess with Jay, but I might be tempted to mess with the female officer. So let's get the feelings out of it. It doesn't mean women are inferior or less than or any of that sort of thing. It just means that men are better at certain things generally, and women are better at other things generally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the minute you start, anytime you're hiring on something other than capability, you're going to diminish the quality of what's occurring, right? Like, period. And this goes for many scenarios. Like, I'm sure we see this, or I see this all the time in corporate America, where it's like, well, we need to button a seat really fast because we need a resource. Well, what's the price of hiring the wrong person? There's a price to that. And if quality is diminished and you get the wrong person on the team, that matters. And you're almost better off not doing the work and losing the project. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we compromise way too often in regards to getting the right people in the seat. And it's not fair for multiple people. It's not fair for, in this example, it's not fair for this woman. Let's assume that she's just kind of incompetent across the board. It's not fair to her. She's stuck in this position that she's not going to have success.
She's not qualified to do.
Yeah, she's not qualified to do. She's walking around probably hiding her incompetence all the time. I mean, that's not a good place to be for anybody, let alone
and now
obviously.
She's a national embarrassment now. I mean, think about the tens of millions of people who have seen that video. And now she's, I mean, I actually do in a lot of ways feel bad for her. She was teed up for failure. And that's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that too. And I was like, oh my gosh. I just laughed because I'm like, you shot him with his own gun. There's it's just kind of funny, but
it's funny. It's funny. It is funny, but it's also just horrible. Yeah. Poor guy, poor other police officers that are trying to do their job and they have to babysit their little sister while they're doing it. Yeah. It's like, good gosh. You know, you did say something that I want to call out a little bit. You said it's not fair. I don't care if it's fair or not. Yeah. That has no relevancy in whether or not we should or shouldn't do something. Yeah, fair means nothing to me.
Yeah.
You like the only reason fair makes sense is if you have a level playing field, right? Like you can't have different playing fields. So it's actually unfair to have, for example, female police officers that don't have to complete the same physical requirements that a man does. That is unfair. But as far as it's not fair that women can't, I don't care about any of that. What I care about is efficacy of the work and can the people that we're hiring do the job we're hiring them to do.
I'm trying to point out that you're not doing any favors for the individual that you hire.
That's true.
That's incompetent. You're making it harder for them as well.
Yeah. I do get tired of like, oh, this is the first person to break the whatever perceived ceiling. It's like, I don't care about that. Is that person the most qualified? If she's a black transgender non-binary lesbian and she happens to do something great, I don't care about some weird glass ceiling. I care about that's the best qualified person. That's it, period.
Yeah. Well, and you and I, and most people for that matter, and most people should have this attitude, in my opinion. Do you want to be breaking records because it was handed to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what an insult. Yeah. What an insult. Anybody that is getting a handout, this is the attitude that should be the case, in my opinion. Anybody that's getting a handout, you should be pissed off that it's actually not on your merit that you're actually getting the promotion or getting the job.
But do you think these people know they're getting handouts, or are they so lost, so lacking in situational awareness that they think, oh no, I actually am the most qualified person? I mean, because Kamala Harris probably believes she's the most qualified person for the job, and she's actually probably one of the least qualified. I don't think she thinks that.
Yeah. I think she knows she's not, but she thinks other people think she is, so she keeps up the charade.
I don't know. I don't know if I believe you on that.
No, you're not self-aware enough that she actually.
I don't think I can see your argument. You know, you can make a case for that argument, but I think she lacks I think she's so arrogant that she believes that she truly is the best person for the job. I do.
Which is so unfortunate.
Hard to believe.
You can't work with that, right? There's nothing to work with. Yeah.
And hopefully we don't need to. California might have to. I think she's probably going to make a run for governorship in California.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. All right. Well, let's get to some questions now that we've pissed half the population off.
Yeah, you did. I just listened and slightly agreed.
We were part of it. You're guilty by association. You're not getting out of this one, man.
All right. We're going to field questions from the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Aaron Cobb, as a man in my early 30s, I'm looking to expand my wealth in the next few years. I've talked with my parents about some about this some, and right now it looks like my best option is to get hooked up with a financial advisor to do investments for me. Are there any other options that either of you would recommend?
Did he say he wants to build wealth now? So it sounds like, well, I'm making an assumption, and maybe that's the first part of this, is making sure that your other parts of your financial house are in order. You know, so how what's your debt look like? What's your cash flow look like? Are there ways that you can maximize your earnings potential? Because that's actually that's going to be a greater return than investing in the stock market. And I invest in the stock market. But if I could take $10,000 and pump it into my business, and let's say put together an event and make $50,000 from it, I will do that all day long over putting $10,000 into the stock market and hopefully making $12,000 over the next 3 years and being excited about it. So I would say before you start getting into that, not that you shouldn't, there are tax benefits, tax breaks, 401ks, Roths, all that kind of stuff, and you'll figure out all that stuff. But just be aware of the other foundational principles first. So again, cash flow, knowing where your money is coming and where it's going. It's like the analogy of the sinking ship. If the ship is sinking and you just keep shoveling water off, but water is coming on faster than you're shoveling it off, you're going to sink to the bottom of the ocean. So the first thing you probably ought to consider doing is plugging the hole. And most people go straight to investments, straight to all the sexy stuff, but realize, or maybe never realize, that they've got an extra $500, $700, $1,000 a month leaking out of their cash flow because they have no idea where it's going. And that's an immediate return for you if we're talking about investments. So cash flow first, making sure your insurances are in place, life insurance, health insurance, auto insurance.
Emergency fund.
Those are the big
stuff.
three. Yeah, emergency fund. That, like, your defensive position essentially is what that is.
Yeah.
And then you get into your earnings potential and see where you might maximize your own earnings. Because if another example, I've seen people go to school and do this, and I'm not a huge advocate of formal education, but this makes sense to me that if a school teacher is making, I don't know, $65,000 a year, and they can go back to school for the next 2 years and spend 10 grand, but their earnings potential goes from 65 to 85, that's a legitimate investment to me. So there's things like that you can look at with earnings potential, and then start looking into the investments and business stuff and real estate and all these other sorts of avenues that are good, but you just want to make sure you cover the other bases as well.
Yeah. I have nothing to add. I mean, this is your area of expertise. All I know is when I worked for myself, I would get so wrapped up into cash flow is everything, you know. Like if Asia and I were talking about saving money, I'm like, well, you can save money, but if I just get another project, that's going to blow that out of water, right? So it was always about earning potential. I always felt like I could just work a little bit harder in a different way or increase my rates, and that was a quicker win and more successful than, you know what I mean, all the other little things.
Oh, yeah.
But it was almost a trap for me because my answer to everything was just like close another deal, you know, but.
I don't think it's that bad. I mean, I like a lot of what Dave Ramsey shares on the basic foundational stuff for probably 80% of the population. But I'm not really interested in eating beans and rice for the rest of my life. Now, there's a point in my time a point of time in my life where that made a lot of sense. But if I could go out and make an extra $5,000 this month, I'll do that before trying to starve myself and keep $5,000 that I've already earned.
Totally.
But I realize also not everybody's in that position. So, but that's the position you want to get in.
Yeah.
Like if I needed $10,000 in the next 2 weeks for whatever, I could generate that now.
Yeah.
Because of the things that I've done over the past 10 to 15 years of my life.
Ryan, when you talk about your earnings, like your potential earnings, to increase your potential earnings, maybe for the average guy, and we obviously don't know this for Aaron in his current circumstance, but let's just assume that the average guy listening works a W-2 job. What does that look like from your perspective? What advice would you say, like how to evaluate and increase your potential earning?
Raises and promotions. So that's what I mean for your average W-2 person. So for example, to go back to the school teacher, that's a raise. They went and got their degree, and now they go from 65 to 85. That would be a raise. Or another one in the school teacher arena is if somebody moves into administration now. So they're a school teacher, now they're moving into admin. That's that's a promotion. And with that promotion comes extra earnings. So if you're not in that position, one thing you might be able to do is just go to your boss. And so, Kipp, if you're my boss, I might say, hey, boss, I've been working here for 5 years now. I'm really happy with the work we're doing and excited about what we're doing. I just wanted to see, I had some questions for you and I have some things I wanted to present. The first question is, how do you feel about my performance? Where do you feel like I've done well? Where do you feel like I can improve? Like, just have that kind of discussion. And then I might say, well, the reason I wanted to talk with you today is because I would like to figure out how I can maximize my earnings here through the value that I offer. So I'd like to ask for a raise, and in exchange for that raise, here's the things that I anticipate I'll do in order for you to justify that. And you might say, yeah, sure. And then you're going to kick yourself because you're like, I should have asked for that 2 years ago. Or you might say, Ryan, we're not doing that right now, but if you want to evaluate that, we can do that in 6 months. Now, as an employee, be very careful with that because a lot of times bosses will just kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to deal with this right now. And they'll just say 6 months, come bother me. And then 6 months, it's the same conversation that you had today. So what I would say to that is, Kipp, if you said to me, hey, in 6 months, let's have that conversation. Oh, great. I'm flattered. I appreciate your willingness and openness to that idea. Let me ask you this. What would need to happen between now and the next 6 months where it would be a no-brainer for you to offer me a raise? And then they're going to tell you. Now what you're doing is not only are you figuring out what you can do, you're putting their feet to the fire in a very respectful way. You're holding them accountable to their word because that's what mature men do. We don't use soft language. We don't allow people off the hook. And if they try, we pin them down, again, respectfully. But that would be how I'd ask for a raise. But I would ask for a promotion very much the same way. If I see a promotion at the office, I'd go into the boss. I'd be the first one of the boss. Hey, boss, I saw in the bulletin there's a new promotion within the organization, and I want to throw my hat in the ring. But is there anything that you can tell me when you're considering who's going to get this position that I might be aware of so that I can present myself in the best light and show you what I'm capable of doing? Like, people will call that brown nosing. Call it whatever you want. I want to win. I want the promotion. And you're asking what you can do to add value, and you're giving yourself a leg up. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, you get that type of communication from an employee, your respect for them just skyrockets. Because you want someone that's hungry, that they want it, not passive. You want someone that's assertive and they want it. Because that tells you their level of commitment to the new position or their level of commitment to the org. But if they're just sitting back and they're just ticket takers, they don't want it. They're not hungry enough to even be successful in that role anyway. So I don't think it's brown nosing. I think it's an outward expression of what's important to them, right? And their willingness to put in the hard work. Yeah.
I think the other thing that's important. Question. Yeah, it is a good question. I think the important thing here too is that when it comes to raises and promotions, you can't just do really good when those opportunities present themselves. Yeah. And this is why I get frustrated when I hear guys even allude to that's not my responsibility. They don't pay me enough to, that kind of stuff is ridiculous. If you really want the promotion, then you do it now. You do the work now. I had a manager when I was young and I was in retail, and we were talking about leadership, and I was really, at the time I was young and immature, and I was really interested in the title of leadership. And she says, lead before the title. Do the title now. Do the work of what that title entails now, and that will inevitably happen. And sure enough, it did. And it continues to do that. So if the other one you hear is like Gandhi's, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to change in your life, do that now. And then all of the results will come as a result of the effort that you put in today. But I don't need to wait to help other people. I don't need to wait to share resources. I don't need to wait to communicate. I don't need to wait to look for problems until I'm a quote unquote leader at my office. I should do that now appropriately. There are lines that you can step over, but you have to do it appropriately. And if you do that, the promotions and the raises just come.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tony Urzi, would love to hear your thoughts on the difference between putting up boundaries versus building a wall in regards to relationships. How to keep a boundary that guards from becoming a wall that separates. Thanks for all that you guys do.
That's good. I don't know if I've really thought about that. When you first said that, I was thinking the difference between a boundary and a wall. A wall is impenetrable. A boundary is more established. You know, maybe it's not as tangible. I guess that's one thing that came to mind. But another thing that came to mind is the motives a person would have. What's the phrase? High fences make the best neighbors. Right? Like, put a fence up. You will be better neighbors with the people you live around because there's boundaries enforced. And when it comes to the motive of a boundary, it's so that everybody has the expectation and we can have a healthy, good relationship within the parameters of the way that we have defined. But when you put a wall up, it's like, no, I don't want to have anything healthy. I don't want to communicate. I don't want to do these things. And my motive is to keep you away from me in some capacity because typically it's because I'm hurt or it's my response to past relationships. So I think the difference is your motive. Is your motive to keep the relationship pure and good and healthy? Or is your motive to reject, create a barrier to keep yourself safe from harm? Probably perceived harm, probably harm that doesn't even really exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Intent, mindset, whatever you want to call it. And Tony, one, you know this, because I'm sure we've even had this conversation in the past, but like a phrase that I love to steal from the book, The Anatomy of Peace from the Arbinger Institute is a heart at war or heart at peace. You can establish a boundary and still have a heart at peace. That's the check. And I love that language. Maybe that doesn't work for other people, but I know what that feels like. If Ryan said, "Do you have a heart at war towards someone?" I'd be like, you don't even have to describe it. I'd be like, yeah, I do or I don't, right? I just, that language helps me like check my intent and my mindset towards someone. So if you have a heart at war, call it a boundary, call it a wall. It doesn't matter, but it's a wall, right? If you have a heart at war towards someone. And you're saying, well, I need to establish boundaries. It's like, it will come through how you feel about them. It's going to look like a wall. But if you have a heart at peace, there's some empathy involved, then absolutely we're operating in that space of boundary, which is in the best interest of both parties.
Well, so that's let me give you an example, because I think sometimes we can talk at these high levels and it's like, okay, what does this look like in practice? So I think within a relationship, let's give the example or the scenario of a husband and wife needing to talk about an important issue. Maybe it's the way that one of their children are behaving, or maybe it's the way that you two are behaving towards each other. You guys aren't being kind and decent and respectful, and the marriage is kind of faltering, and it feels like you're roommates more than lovers, and so you need to talk about it. A boundary would be, hey, babe, let's talk about these things, but if either of us get heated, as we have in the past, can we both agree to just take a step back from the conversation and then to re-engage when we've both had the chance to settle down? And we won't call each other names. We won't attack each other personally. We'll just talk about how we're feeling and give suggestions on what the other person might be able to do to help have this be a better relationship. But if it goes sideways, then let's both agree that we'll come back when we're both more level-headed. That's reasonable. And the motive, the intent, is to have a good, healthy discussion that drives the relationship forward. Here's the other example. Same thing. You two relationship's not going well. You guys are struggling, roommates instead of lovers. And she comes to you and says, hey, the marriage isn't going well. I need to talk to you. And in your mind, you get triggered and you think she's going to tell you she wants a divorce and she's going to tell you how horrible you are and she's going to henpeck you and nitpick you. And you say, I don't want to talk about it. Every time we do this, we argue. I don't even want to talk about it. Can we just do this later? And then march out of the room. That's a wall. It does not foster healthy results. So same scenario, one's a boundary, one's a wall.
Yeah. That's a great example. I can relate to both.
Yeah,
All right.
we all can.
Robbie Leffel, should men prioritize personal projects that connect them to their strengths and masculine identity, such as woodworking, building, and gardening, even if they're not necessarily required, but they would be beneficial to us and others if we created them? Can dedicating time to these projects help ground and fulfill us as men?
My answer is yes and no. I saw this question, and I really like this question. And my answer is yes and no. Now, I'm going to just use some verbiage here because this will help me articulate what I mean. There's certain things that, for example, working out is not a hobby to me. It's just a requirement. It's just what you do. I enjoy it. I have fun with it. I don't make money doing it. Technically it sounds like a hobby, but it's not just like this enjoyable. Like, does that make sense? How I'm even defining that?
Yeah. Well, it's not always fun, right? Like sometimes you grind to get it done.
Sure. But I don't even think hobbies need to be fun. Like somebody might go hiking, for example, and hiking, like you go on a grueling hike and it's not always fun, but you feel good in accomplishing it. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what the distinction there. Maybe we can hash that out a little bit. But the point that I was making is that there's certain things that we should just do as men because we have a responsibility and obligation to do them. So being fit, in my mind, is an obligation and responsibility I have to myself and the people I love. I'm obligated to do it. It's not a question of if I should be healthy or not. I'm obligated to be healthy as a man. So I should prioritize that over pruning roses in the garden or something. Like, of course, I should prioritize it over that. Is pruning roses in the garden less manly, though? I don't actually think so. My grandpa, I remember he had this rose garden that he loved, and every time we went over, his backyard was immaculate. And I don't particularly like roses. I don't even like the smell of them. But I loved watching him just mosey, and that's the word I would say. Just mosey in the garden, hands behind his back, slow paced, just moseying around, looking at his flowers, looking at his plants, and I loved it. I don't think he was being less manly because he wasn't shooting guns or at jujitsu. So, yes and no. If you have a weakness, a deficiency that puts you or the people you love at risk, you should prioritize that.
Yeah.
But if you're working on those things and you're improving in those departments and you're getting better at those things, I don't have any problem doing activities that some people would say is unmanly. Painting, drawing, moseying in the garden, planting a garden, learning how to cook. That's not less manly. It just isn't. So that's my answer. Yes and no.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, if as men we have responsibilities in the space that requires and or our masculinity is brought to the table to serve others. If we're indeficient in those areas of masculinity that hinders our ability to serve others effectively, we should be shoring those up. Absolutely. Hobbies, on the other hand, it is whatever it is, as long as that's not the priority over our role as a man.
Right.
Is that fair?
I mean, I think it is fair. I think, you take something like surfing, for example. I have quite a few friends who like to surf. I wouldn't say that directly makes them a quote unquote better man, but if it makes life more enjoyable, if they're more pleasant to be around, if they had challenging to them and they're overcoming obstacles and they're doing hard things and they're getting in shape and they're exposing themselves to sun, like there's so much good that would come from that. It's hard to say that doesn't make them a better man. I think it does. But the analogy I guess you could use or the example is this weekend, I had the opportunity to go shoot. I'm going to choose shooting over painting every time. And maybe it's because I just would like to shoot more than I'd like to paint. But also I think there's a much more practical application for me as a man to learn to shoot. Now, if I'm an expert shooter and I shoot all the time and I get plenty of training and one day I just want to sit and just paint something beautiful, get after it. By all means, do it. Because I think creation is pretty masculine as well.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Gavin Meserly, when trying to lead my leaders, I find it difficult when being asked to compromise what I know is right. Operationally, not morally, though. How do you feel is the best way to handle this situation?
I'm glad he clarified operational versus moral, because moral it's a hard no. It's like, no, I'm the leader. I'm in charge. No, we're not doing that, because you have to maintain the integrity of the team or the group or the mission, of course.
Really quick.
But operationally, go ahead.
At the beginning of his question, when trying to lead my leaders, so I'm assuming he's talking about leading up the chain of command, not leading his subordinate leaders, right? Is that how you read that?
No, because initially I read leading subordinates who are also leaders.
I think he's talking about leading
but I
up
think
the
you're
chain, right? Because that makes more sense. Why is compromising what he knows is right? Like, why does he feel he has to compromise?
Yeah. Okay, so that actually makes more sense. I misunderstood when you said
I did
think
too when
right.
I first read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so morally, of course, if one of your bosses is asking you to do something immoral, this is why I talk about sovereignty, guys. If I've got $100,000 in liquid assets, maybe I've got 20 in the bank and I've got 50 over here in an IRA and another 30 somewhere else, and then crypto that I can get at some point, and a boss comes to me and says, hey, I need you to do this, and it's illegal, unethical, or immoral, I can say, F you, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And I can leave. Now, it's not going to be comfortable. I'm not going to be real excited about it, but I've got $100,000. I get a $100,000 insurance policy against doing things that jeopardize my principles. And that's why sovereignty is so important. If I had no money and I'm strapped for cash, I'm living paycheck to paycheck or worse, meaning I'm going into debt every single week, and he asked me to do something immoral, much more likely to do that. Significantly more. In fact, I've done that because I've been financially compromised. So you have to make sure that you're sovereign in all ways for that reason. So, little side conversation. Well, at the end of the day, when you're leading up the chain of command, leading your leaders, and they're asking you to do something operational, they're the leaders. It's their show. So the only thing that you can do is say, hey, like if you're my leader, Kipp, hey, you gave me and my team a project at work, and we're really excited to do it. I had this idea, I learned this technique, or I've been trying this thing, or I came across this strategy, and I wanted to ask if you would be okay with me taking just this element of the project and trying it this way. Not the whole thing. 90% what you asked me to do, like, sure. But I think if we do this 10%, just a little differently, I think it'll make a difference. And I'll make you a deal. If it makes a difference and is better, then we win and we did it better, faster, and we're going to make more money from it. If it doesn't work at all, we'll scrap it. We'll go back to your old way and we'll double down on what you suggested. I'd try to make a deal.
Totally.
I mean, but if I said, hey, let me take over and do 100% of it, that's a hard sell. But if I said, give me 10% and I'll do 90 on yours and 10 on mine, what do you think? Yep. I think if you're worth your weight and you've been around for a while and he trusts, knows, and likes you, I think he might say, all right, give it a try. What's the worst? And you tell him, like, hey, the worst can happen is we're going to be 2 weeks late on the project. The best that could happen is we're going to come under budget by 20% and we're going to make 300% more. Those are pretty good. I'd take those bets all day long.
Totally. And Gavin, I don't know if this is the case for you, but like, make sure you're approaching this from a perspective of humility. Yeah. Right? Because, we all think we're right. Is there things that the bosses know that you don't know, that you're not even considering? And so you may not be. Now, the other thing is ask, right? I would go to my boss and say, hey, I'm struggling getting behind this. Like, can you explain to me why this is the right direction? Because I want to be all behind it, but I'm seeing gaps in it, and maybe it's me and I have a misunderstanding. Can you give me more information so I can understand this better, so I can rally behind it? So put the pressure back on them to get clarity from the fact that you don't think it's the right direction. let me share a quick story. This is probably about a year and a half ago. Ryan, you'll appreciate this a little bit. But I was putting together a curriculum, right, for leadership development. And there was like 10 pillars. And this leader of mine comes to me and says, 10, huh? That's a lot. And I was like, yeah, but it's whole and complete. It needs the 10. And he goes, I disagree. And I'm like, I don't need you to agree, right? Like I was so opinionated, right? That I know this is the right thing. And this is perfect because in my mind, I was right, he was wrong. And then he flanks me and goes, Kipp, is it more important that it's whole and complete or that it gets adopted and used? And I was like, damn, got it, right? So it wasn't that I was right and he was wrong. I was right and he was right. But he was thinking a lot more strategic than I was thinking. And he was saying, yeah, your 10 pillars are great, Kipp, but 10's too much. And it's going to affect people's ability to adopt what you're trying to teach them. So it's better that it's less complete and it gets used. And that was an insight that I completely overlooked.
Yeah.
And so be careful. They might be right and you might be right. You just might be looking at things differently. And so seek to understand.
It was cool in that example that you had the humility to say, oh yeah, you know what? That is a good point, and that changes the whole thing. Because a lot of guys would be like, well, you put me in charge, I'm doing it. I'm doubling down.
Yeah.
Most people actually would. So for you to say, oh, you know what? Like, and the other cool thing is now you have a part 2.
Yeah. Hey, totally.
Like here's the foundational 5. And now that we're getting good with that, let's dig deeper. And here's the more sophisticated 5 or whatever, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to share one other thing. I like that example because of how we misread it. I actually think there's value in the way that we misread it initially.
Yeah.
Totally. When you're a leader. So, for example, I'm the leader in the Iron Council, right? If there was the leader, that would be me. But I have a lot of leaders in the Iron Council who manage teams, who help with different tasks and projects and parts of our organization. I didn't always used to be this way, but I've been really aware of letting them lead. Why would I be the bottleneck to my organization's growth?
Yeah.
I'm the one who asked them to be in this role. If I asked them, it seems like I have some faith in what they can do. And we've had situations where guys have come to me with ideas and some I've nixed. But I think for the most part, I'm usually okay with saying, okay, well, let's try it. Yeah. And then we make it better or we scrap it. And there's a lot of things that we've scrapped over time. But what I would suggest to you, if you're leading down the chain of command to your leaders down the chain of command, is follow them. Kipp, if I give you a responsibility, I'm not going to micromanage. We're going to talk about expectations, but I'm not going to micromanage. And if you come to me, and I've had plenty of instances where this is the case, and somebody comes to me and says, hey, here's how I think we should do it. And I don't agree. I'll say, I don't actually agree with that, but I'm curious. I'm actually curious if you might be right. And I know I'm right, but I think you might be. We'll find out.
Yeah.
And I have been surprised in the overwhelming majority of times. I've been pleasantly surprised with how well things work that aren't my ideas. I know it. Yeah. I don't always have the best ideas. But remember what it feels like when a leader above the chain of command doesn't take your advice. And remember that feeling for when you're in the leadership role working down the chain of command, how those people want to be treated the same way you wanted to be treated when the roles were reversed.
Yeah, totally. Well, and an analogy that I've shared a couple times, if we relate this to our kids cleaning their room, right? Micromanaging in this example is me telling them exactly how to do the room. When in reality, I've lost sight. My job as their dad is not to have a clean room. It's not about the room. It's about the kid that's cleaning the room. And what does that kid need? Someone to believe in him, to make mistakes, to be believed in and not do it perfect and pivot and adjust and grow and get coaching. That is what is best for the kid. But often as leaders, what we do is we end up operationally micromanaging per se the operations. Why? Because we're so narrow focused on the operational outcome that we all lost sight that the strategic play is the investment of the person actually doing the work.
I thought you were going to say, what does that kid need? And I thought, get hit with the belt or a wooden spoon or something so he cleans his damn room. That's what I thought you were going to go.
Another podcast at another time, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Parenting, all the worst things you can do as a parent.
We could go for hours on that one, or at least I could.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
For sure.
All right,
Okay,
Chris, the dude Davis. Okay, guys, Battle Team Eagle. I love this question, actually. Battle Team Eagle is studying for the month of January and February the book, The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran. Below is one of the questions from our lesson plan. Please give us your thoughts on this question. The question is, you can hold a baby and you can hold a bag of groceries, but you can't hold others accountable. Meaning accountability can only come from within and from yourself. Knowing this, how can you help others be more accountable?
Well, I actually don't fully believe that. I think there's tiers of accountability.
Yeah.
So the lower, I don't disagree with the premise of it, but the way that it's worded, I don't totally agree with it. So I can hold you accountable, Kipp, here's a good way I can do it. Hey, Kipp, let's say we had this podcast scheduled at 10 and you're not here. I can say to you, Kipp, if you're late one more time, you're out. I'm not having you podcast with me again.
Yeah.
Would that be holding you accountable?
Absolutely.
Totally. That's not personal accountability. That's me enforcing accountability on you.
Yep.
And then you make a decision. You're either late or you're not.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm really close to saying that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just kidding. I was late. I was late today. So.
Every week I'm like, is this my last week? 8 years later?
No, I was late today. So, but that's a silly example. Not even silly. That's an actual accurate example of how somebody might hold somebody else accountable. Or to your kids, hey, if you don't clean your room in the next 15 minutes, you're grounded for the rest of the weekend. That's accountability.
Absolutely.
You are accountable to the consequences of your decisions or lack thereof. That's a lower tier of accountability. You talk about it, commitment versus compliance, right?
Yeah.
There's other ways to hold somebody accountable too. So I go to the gym every day, 5 days a week with my friend, and usually get 6 days in. His name's Woody, and so we go to the gym every morning. And there's been days where I'm like, I don't actually want to go to the gym. I'm not interested in going to the gym. And the only reason I go to the gym is not because I want to. It's because I know he's going to be there and I'm not going to let him down.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of self-accountability because I'm doing it. The motive of accountability is not as pure as just entirely self-accountable.
Yeah.
But the motive is a little bit personally accountable, but also it's that external factor that's helping you make better decisions. Totally. And then there's self-accountability, which is, I don't even care if Woody goes to the gym or not, I'm going to be there. And if he's there, great. And if he's not, I don't care. I'm going to do my workout all the same, just as hard, just as much, if he was or was not looking. And that to me is character. It's accountability for sure, but it's character. What do you do when no one is watching? Would you make the same decisions today in every instance if nobody ever knew what you did? If it's yes, then I think you're in alignment with your character. You have integrity. And if it's no, then you have some issues to work out there. So for me, I choose to look at it and say, okay, there's tiers of accountability. And when somebody's just getting started with something, having lower tiers of accountability is completely adequate, completely good.
Yeah.
You got to have it.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, and this goes to your point about teaching your kids about how to clean their room and help out around the house, is that over time, through the lessons you shared, because you're not going to be a micromanager or that enforcer type person, they're going to learn self-accountability. I keep my stuff really clean and straight, very, very organized, like everything's in the right place. Well, I learned that from my mom, and that had to be, I can't even tell you how many times she's like, no, clean your room better. No, go back in there. The bathroom toilet seat wasn't clean. You need to do that and get that done right. We do things right. And now that's not a question. It's so ingrained into my DNA because she made sure it was that I'm at a different level of accountability. It's almost accountability that you don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's that ingrained in who you are as a person that you don't even need to hold yourself accountable to anything. It's just what you do.
It's just what you do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I love this question that Chris posed for us because often there's an element of accountability that gets overlooked. And you touched base here, or you touched on it briefly, and I just want to like expand on it slightly, and it was the statement is accountability, you can only come from within or from yourself. So from like organizational perspective, or actually, let's use a podcast as an example, right? If you're like holding me accountable because I'm late. Well, guess what the accountability is based upon? The agreement between you and I that I would be here on time. So are you holding me accountable to anything other than my own word?
That's a good point.
That's what you're doing.
Maybe enforcing accountability.
Yeah, you're enforcing my accountability to myself because I said I would do it. And this is what I love about like accountability that we create within the Iron Council is, and I love this play on words, is our battle plans is our outward expression of what we're committed to. So when you hold me accountable to my battle plan, you're not nonchalantly holding me accountable to some ideal thing that Ryan Michler thinks Kipp should do. No, you're holding me accountable to what I said I would do, to what I committed to myself. And that changes the accountability conversation when you look at it that way. So for you, for instance, in a job environment, for you to hold someone accountable to their performance, guess what you need to do? The expectations need to be clear. It's got to be clear what's expected of this person. Otherwise, what are you holding them accountable to? A covert contract? Your own definition of success is without clearly communicating it, and let alone communicating it and asking them if they're willing to do the necessary work of that role? So the accountability is really an alignment conversation of the commitment between the individual and the leader already. And you're realigning and having a conversation about what they said they were already committed to do. And that just changes what it means to hold someone accountable. Now it's not this persecution thing. It's like, Ryan, I'm only doing what you said is important to you.
Yeah, has that changed?
Has that changed? Yeah. It helped me understand. And now it's rooted in service and honoring your word and your integrity, not me trying to control you.
I love it, man. That is such a good distinction. That got me thinking again about, well, maybe it only does come from yourself, and other people can enforce that accountability that you said. You know where we see this, Kipp, is we actually see it on battle teams inside the Iron Council. And battle teams, if you don't know, are just are small groups of men, 10 to 12 to 15 guys, all working together, holding each other accountable.
Yeah.
Enforcing accountability, which maybe has maybe it's more accurate. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Anyways, we'll have guys so each team has their own set of expectations. Like, you need to be here this amount of time. You need to post these numbers. You need to contribute this much. They have their expectations, and it's all clearly defined. And every once in a while, we'll have a team member who will ghost. He'll fall off the bandwagon a little bit. He'll leave. He won't communicate numbers, maybe slacking, not holding up to what he said he would do. And a lot of the times, battle team leaders have a hard time removing him from the team. Like, I don't want to remove him from the team. And this is the conversation I always have with him. You're not removing him from the team. He's removing himself.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you mean? Well, you said he knew. He signed the thing that said, I will be here on time. I will be present this amount of time. I will contribute this way. I will post these numbers. I will do all of these things. It's not you not doing that. It's him. Now, we're going to give him opportunities. If he misses one time, you're not just going to throw him to the curb. But if you've continually said, hey, you need to be here. Hey, you need to be here. Hey, you need to be here. The last conversation before it happens is to say, hey, you know what? you agreed to these things. Has that changed? Has that priority changed? And if you can't uphold these, and we know why they're in place, you know why, right? So you clarify with them, yes. If you can't do this, then you're choosing to leave Battle Team Eagle.
Yeah.
And I will let you know that you're no longer part of Battle Team Eagle. But that's not my choice. The choice is yours to make. What choice do you want to make?
Totally. And there's a black belt version of this a little bit, is when we need to hold someone accountable when they're not honoring their commitments. Instead of immediately running to uncertainty, like, hey, Ryan, you're going to lose this job, or Ryan, I'm going to have to fire you, or you're going to kick off the team, help them understand why the commitments were there in the first place. Mm-hmm. Ryan, I can't have you not on the call. Why? Because it sets the bar for the rest of the team. This isn't about you, right? Like, this is about how you showing up affects the team. This is about how you not hitting sales quota affects our ability to employ the rest of the company. It's not about you. Now, I need you to perform for the greater good of what we're trying to accomplish. And then that way, when they course correct, they see the bigger picture. And now they're not operating out of uncertainty, right? Oh man, I better be on the call. If not, I'm going to get kicked off. It's like, whoa, that's blue belt thinking. Black belt thinking is how you show up affects other people. Let me paint that picture for you, because that's way more empowering and that's more accurate than it is really shaming you or punishing you for not doing the thing.
Right. That is interesting, because I'm taken back to team sports. You know, when I was playing in high school, man, you didn't want to let your performance slip because you didn't want to be the guy to let the team down.
Yeah. Yeah, so much.
Especially for men, like, it's powerful.
Totally. So much that if you were, how's this? How many, well, maybe, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but like kids even willingly stepping down because they're letting the team down.
Yeah, I probably saw that from other team members. And I don't know that I've ever had that on one of the teams I coach, because it's young teams, you know, community stuff. But that doesn't sit well with me either. Oh, that would infuriate. I'm like, you said you're going to be here. You finish this season and you finish it strong. Like, you will finish it, and you will finish it to 100 miles an hour. And if you can't, then you don't have to next year, but you made a commitment this year. You're finishing this up.
Well, and it's you looking to coach that kid well, right, and honor his commitments. I've literally have been in a situation where I've let someone go from their job of employment. And I don't say this as a badge. I say this as what we're saying actually works. Like, we're not blowing smoke. This can actually be how accountability should be like in an organization. This is fully possible. And I've had a scenario where I've let people go and they apologize to me. I'm firing them and they're apologizing because they realize I'm just holding them accountable to their commitment, and they didn't honor it. And so they're like, sorry, I didn't honor my commitments, and you gave me a fair shake. Like, and that means, and I only say that is like, that's not like, I want to be really careful. I don't want anyone listening going, oh my gosh, that's so great. Like, look at Kipp. He could fire a guy from his job.
I don't think people are taking it that way.
But that mindset allows that person to do what when they leave? They're learning. They took ownership of their dismissal of their employment. And it was a result of them not honoring a commitment. Do you think that person's going to be better off moving on to another job and self-evaluating how they show up in the world versus the employee that's just like gets fired because you lack the courage to communicate clearly and hold them accountable, so they feel now that they're just getting fired because their boss doesn't like them? That person's a victim walking away. There's nothing for them to change. They just had a bad boss.
Right. Good point. We have this happen even in the Iron Council. I get messages at this point every week from guys who were in the Iron Council who want to come back. And I actually, whenever they want to come back, I say, why? What's changed?
Yeah.
What? And a lot of the times it's, well, I was doing well, and then I just kind of got busy, and all the things were going well, so I got rid of that, and then I kind of just slipped, and then I realized, oh, it was the Iron Council that was keeping me on track, and so I want to come back. Or I've also had a lot of people say, well, I thought my battle team leader was just being a dick to me, and he kicked me off the team, and so I left bitter and frustrated, and then I realized he wasn't being a dick, he was just holding me accountable. And I actually see the value in that now because I realize it wasn't personal. But I've had this thought too. When you have, as a man, when you see other men, we just naturally are more respectful or respect more men who will hold us accountable and have a standard and don't let that slip.
Totally.
Versus the guy who is wishy-washy and kind of flipping on his standard and moves and has all sorts of expectations. Even though we might not like the guy with the standards as much, we always hold him in higher regard.
Yeah.
Always, without fail. So what lesson should that teach you? That you need to be a man who has those standards and doesn't let people walk all over them.
Yeah, absolutely. We have time for 2 more.
Yeah, let's take a couple more.
All right. Jacob Hance, your daily routine to becoming the best dad possible. Daily routine and becoming the best dad possible.
What's interesting about this question is that your daily routine won't only make you the best dad possible, it'll make you the best everything possible. And that's how we know it's a principle, because it applies broadly. So my routine, I get up at 5:30 every morning. I don't know how detailed or granular you want me to get on this, but I'm not going to tell you about, my personal bowel movements or anything like that. But get up at 5:30 every morning, have a glass of water, go to the gym. I'm at the gym from 6 to 7:30 on average, 7:15, 7:30. Yeah, somewhere in there. Okay. My workout is strength training, and 3 days a week, I'll sit in the sauna for 15 to 20 minutes.
Post-workout?
Come home. What's a post-workout? Yeah.
Okay.
It can get rough, but it's good. I don't do it before the workout because I would rather, if I can choose one, I'd rather have the workout. Yeah. And if I do 20 minutes in the sauna, my workout's not going to be nearly as effective. So I don't eat anything before. It makes me sick. Like if I go, I'll throw up if I eat food before I go to the gym. So I don't know how people do it in the afternoon. That they do. So that's what I do there. And then I come home, get cleaned up, have a couple of eggs, usually, and some bacon, some more water. And then I get after my day. I just get to work. And then at night, the nighttime is not nearly as disciplined as the morning, just depending on if I'm spending time with my girlfriend or the kids or, going to this practice or that game, just what's going on. But as often as we can, dinner together at the dinner table. Usually we'll, hang out, spend time with the kids. I sing the 2 youngest kids' songs before we go to bed and just kind of play around and laugh with them before we go to bed. And then spend some time with my second son, because my oldest is usually out at games or hanging out with his girlfriend or whatever. And then, I usually will read like 10 pages of my book, whatever book I might be reading right now. And then one thing I actually really like is I have this nighttime tea that I drink that has, I don't even know what it has in it, but it has stuff to just help you relax. And that actually makes a huge difference for me to sleep deeper. So that's it.
Yeah. I told Asia about that tea that you guys drink at nighttime after I visited you out in Maine. And she got some of that. Yeah, she got some of that down at Delta. And I was like, whenever she, I forget about it. And then whenever she says, oh, you want some of that tea? And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Because I'm like,
it's good stuff.
It's nice. Yeah, it's super
nice.
It
is really good. And it's all natural ingredients, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it helps. Yeah. It helps a lot. So
that's
my routine.
I have this pretty much the same routine, to be honest with you. I need to dial in the evenings, right? For the most part. Like I do
too.
I let it drag too late. Then I'm rushing to get kids in bed. Like I need to be like, it's 8 o'clock. This is when we start dialing it down. We start reading some books. You know what I mean? But I don't. It's like I'm trying to multitask, get a little bit more in. And then before I know, it's like 9:30, and then it's like everyone go to bed, and they're riled up, and I'm pissed off, and it's a disaster.
That's about us too.
Yeah, I need to do that evening routine a lot better than I do now. But okay,
I think regarding the question though, being a better dad is I do try to get as much time as I can with all of the kids in some capacity, which is a challenge with 4, and them all doing different things. But if I can get time, I get a lot of time in with my youngest. We get along really well. In the mornings, he wakes up before anybody else. So a lot of the times when he's here, I'll get back from the gym and we'll spend 45 minutes together. Maybe we'll play a video game for 15 or 20 minutes, and then we usually just build Legos for the rest of the morning together, which I kind of like.
I love it. One thing I've done, and I haven't been doing it of late, I need to get back to it, is like one-on-one time with each kid. Yeah. Man, that makes a world of a difference. A couple months ago, one of our daughters was just, I don't know, in a slump. And my wife's like, hey, you know what? We need to have a girls' night. And so I hung out with the other kids. She did a little girls' night. Exactly what she needed. Just some one-on-one time with a parent to talk about whatever, and they're always competing. They're jockeying for your time, when we're at home with all of them. And so I used to do like once a month, like a date night with each kid where they pick the activity or whatever the thing is, and we go do it. In lieu of this question, I'm thinking maybe I need to get back to that actually. So thanks for the question, Jacob, because now I'm like, all right, I need to get back to the monthly date nights at least.
So can I make a recommendation for you that I've been incorporating over the past 2 months? This has been awesome. And it's so simple. I have a set day every single week where I take one of my children to lunch. And it's on rotation. So last week was my youngest. The week
so it's
before
like every Wednesday, and then you rotate the kid.
And then I only take one. I don't take them all to lunch. I only take one at a time. So that means once a month I'm going to lunch with each of them. And it's on my schedule. It is what it is. It doesn't move. If one of the children can't make it because they're busy with something else, I just go to the next one, and we just every single week. And just having that system in place to ensure it actually takes place. Because once a month, here's what most people do with once a month. Let's just fit it in when we can. Yeah. And then you never can. Yeah. Because it's school and sports and kids and friends. But if you're like, no, every Wednesday, lunch, set, that's blocked off of my calendar forever. It's a big deal.
Love that. Yeah, I'm still in it. Done. All right, cool. Last question. Caleb Judge, recommendations for Bible and study prayer outline. I believe many men, including myself, are struggling in our spiritual walk.
I would probably say that, I struggle with my spiritual walk as well. So I don't know that's, I don't do that. I do read from the Bible occasionally. I could be better at it. And every day I think is something worthy of shooting for, but I don't have any sort of apps or anything like that. There's a couple of devotional apps that I've used in the past where I'll pull them up periodically, but I'm not real consistent with that. So I can't pretend that I'm very well versed in that department because I'm just not. I was trying to pull this up. I can't find that devotional app, so you can tell how long it's been since I opened it, but I don't know. Do you have something you use, Kip?
No, I mean, the times where I do the best is, it sounds cheesy, but like even just making sure I go to church every Sunday, right? And then nightly scripture reading, you know what I mean, before I go to bed. But I think for me too, it's interesting how much my daily routine can be in alignment to my spiritual walk if it's about the mindset of why am I doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, I really do feel this, right? Like what is spiritual walk, right? What is religion for the majority of Christians? It's loving your neighbor and loving your God. Well, shit, I can incorporate that every day. So the question is how am I doing that at work? Is what I'm doing propping myself up? Is it about creating opportunities for others? Is it making sure that they know that they're cared for and appreciated, right? Like I feel like it's more about the mindset of how I go into my day will dictate my spiritual walk probably more than a daily routine of scripture study. Now, I'm not saying I should be doing that as well, but a lot of is in the spirit of why I do what I do.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. And I think, you know, in conjunction with that is in our battle planner, we have a spot there for your calibration objective. Your calibration is your mental, spiritual, and emotional health. And I've been going through self-authoring course by Jordan Peterson for that. But we've had a lot of guys who will read the entire Bible in a quarter, or you know, give so many lessons at church or within their church congregation or to their men. And so if you had something like that, whether it's our battle planning app or something different, you can incorporate that and create your own way of doing it. Maybe it's reading a chapter a day, or, you know, taking notes a chapter a day, and it becomes your own system as opposed to somebody else's. I will say this though, I think a lot of the times people are looking for things to be easier, and I'm not sure if the Bible should be one of those things.
Yeah.
Like they're looking for other people to translate it and do this system, and here, read this translation of it because it makes more sense in modern times. And like, I think a lot of times we're looking to gamify things, and I think there's value in that for certain things. But then there's other things that you should just do because they're good things to do, and you don't need to game them. And I would suggest that your spiritual walk is one of those things where you don't need a guide unless it's going to actually help you do it. That's the value of it.
Yeah.
But man, just reading every day alone and then pondering, you know, taking a half an hour and say, okay, I'm going to read for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to journal on what I read about and think about for the next 15 minutes. And it's just half an hour every day. Like that alone would probably change things for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and this is the power of these conversations, man, right? Because like I'm leaving this podcast with like, all right, yep, need to schedule lunches with my kids, you know, need to do a little bit better on my reading. This is the power of banding and having these kind of conversations with like-minded men. So thanks.
Well, it's interesting because I've given you some really good ideas today, but I never leave with any good ideas from you. So I don't know what that's like, but it sounds like it's pretty cool.
Keep having the conversation. We'll see what happens.
No, I love these talks. That's why I made sure I shifted some things around this morning to make sure I was here, because I enjoy, not only do I enjoy the questions, I really do. We used to mock the questions. You remember that?
Yeah.
And there's still some that we do, but I don't know if it's because we're more mature or if because the questions are getting better, or I don't know what it is, but
it's been a while since we've mocked
questions. It's been a long
questions.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
We're getting soft.
All right, guys.
Old men getting soft.
We are. That's not usually how it goes. Don't old men get grumpier and more
That's
ornery
true,
about
actually.
things?
Yeah, probably. Well, you know, the couple call outs, you know, obviously, as you guys know, if you haven't been following Ryan on X and Instagram, please do so. That's at Ryan Michler. And then we have an up and coming event, the Men's Forge. You can go to themensforge.com, a large event, May 1st through the 4th. Right.
Correct.
So once again, that's mensforge.com.
Yeah, I'm excited. I believe that we're going to change a lot of the way events are done. It's a lot of that, not a lot, but a portion of it is that traditional conference style event where you're hearing from good keynote speakers on deep and important subjects. But then we bring in this whole other element that most people don't, where we're hanging out together, we're shooting together, we're doing other physical activities together, and we're getting that opportunity to really know each other. Because what I want to have come out of this event is not that you just have good information, but now you have connections where you can actually start working with these guys on certain subjects and really take the event off that weekend into the rest of your life. So I'm excited about it. Yeah, themensforge.com. And I think that's the biggest thing for now. Go check it out. Oh, also the after action review. If you're interested in doing an after action review for yourself, orderofman.com/AAR. AAR. And you can find that free resource there as well. All right, guys. Appreciate everything today. Good questions as always. We will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become a man you are meant to be.